Never before has it been more important to value your work. Never in history has there been such a blur between work and family, not only for you, but for the people who you serve. Last year, my fiance's father was dying. He was in this really fancy hospice down in Boca. There were palm trees swaying outside the window, and the nurses and the caregivers were in and out. It was a really nice place. Now, on the day prior to his death, he was a little mellow. He was not necessarily in chains, had not necessarily begun the process, but he was certainly not quite with it. And I was exhausted at this point, so was my fiance, and we said, let's go out for a bite to eat and then we'll come back. And the caregiver kind of looked at me and said, are you sure you want to do that? I said, well, it's kind of time for a break. Let me ask him if he wants something. And the caregiver just kind of looked at me and laughed, because how was he going to respond at that point? So I leaned down into his ear and I said, Sid, is there anything we can get for you? And all of a sudden he pops up and he says, just don't buy any green bananas. And the caregiver looked at me and she's like, well, congratulations, you just brought your father-in-law back from the peaceful death he was on his way to. So in that moment, I learned, that valuable lesson of listen to the caregiver. Sometimes she kind of knows what's going on. And I learned quiet. I learned, let's be a little silent. So he's up now, hanging out for a while. I go out, I come back. The process has changed. He's gone a little more quiet again. He's on his way. Things are more peaceful. He's 92 years old. Everybody is in sync in this process. And suddenly the daughter arrives on the scene, Rebecca. Now Rebecca is slightly hysterical. The doctors have told her for days, you need to say goodbye. Sid is holding on for you. And she said, okay, I'm fine, I'm ready to do this. So, the caregiver's there holding Sid's hand. Family members are around. And Rebecca leans over, right into his ear and says, Dad, it's okay for you to go, screaming at the top of her lungs because he was deaf before he died, near death. And of course the man wakes up, bolts up once again, wide awake for the next couple of hours and gave us a couple of hours of fun. The caregiver looks at me and it's just like, you people just do not know how to shut up. So most of the caregivers I've worked with have also taught me a lot, as I said before, about dignity and respect, especially when communicating with a client is just about nearly impossible. Such was the case with this little boy who I'll call Keith. I would see him once a month at a home for children with HIV/AIDS called Incarnation Children's Center. He could only communicate by pointing to the board in front of him that was attached to his wheelchair. And I remember one Christmas I was volunteering for this nonprofit, and we would bring toys and instruments and all sorts of dolls and things like that for the kids. And it was decided that perhaps an electronic keyboard would be a good gift for Keith. Maybe it would give him a little bit of stimulation. Remember, he does not speak, but he was very bright. To my delight, though, a few weeks later, I came back to ICC. And there was a small miracle. It was pretty amazing. The home health care provider had a big surprise for me. They walked me into the activity room, and there was Keith in silence, holding, had his hands on this electronic keyboard. And one of the aides went and turned it on. And it started playing a tune. And he smiled, which was really nice. But then he began to sing words. He hadn't spoken since childbirth, just a word here and there. He was singing full sentences and full words. The place, of course, went up in an uproar. It was unbelievable. But it was because of the dedication of this aide who had spent so much time with him that suddenly, I don't know, I hear music and it sounds like keyboards, and that's just too freaky for me. Where's it coming from? Wow. Talking about divine intervention.